Bombshell documents that have been released by the anonymous hacker group. They appear to show the UK government leading a massive operation to control politics and public opinion, creating what Anonymous has called a large-scale secret service across Europe. Let's get more on this story now from our correspondent Igor Zhdanov. He joins me in the studio, and you've been across this story for us. Real eyebrow raiser is how I'd explain it. But first, let's just tell everybody at home what's in these documents.
So this hacker group, Anonymous, they're saying they got their hands on a trove of classified documents they say are directly from the UK Foreign Office. According to the leak, the UK has been funding an operation that prompted public opinion makers to promote anti-Russian narratives on social media or by planting stories in the press. The British government has apparently been running this since 2015 through proxy organizations. It called the operation Integrity Initiative. Now, this initiative is not confined to just the UK, or even Europe for that matter. London apparently plans to establish similar operations all around the world, really. Neil, you can see the map here, for example. It shows the already active cells, if I may say so, and they're really almost all across Europe.
Looks like a grand and expensive operation. How's it supposed to fight what is so-called Russian disinformation?
Well, indeed, it's expansive. It has hubs in all major, powerhouses of Europe. But the key to understanding this is who they work with. They say it's policymakers, opinion shapers, and so on and so forth. And they are formed into clusters. According to the documents, this network has a very concrete structure. Influencers are divided into clusters based on the geography of their activities. There's a UK one, for instance, featuring dozens of names, but most prominently perhaps outspoken critics of Russia and the right-hand man of the Russian opposition figure Alexei Navalny. All work is allegedly coordinated through concealed contacts inside British embassies. Now, a very important detail here, Neil, is that, yes, this operation does have a budget, but we do not know whether or not the people mentioned in these cluster lists, so to speak, get even a penny out of that budget because, well, the documents that have been published by Anonymous, they shed no light when it comes to that. So for all we know, for all it's worth, the people mentioned, they could be in it without even knowing that they are being puppeteered by the UK government directly.
OK, just how influential do we consider this operation? Any particular cases being highlighted?
Well, the most illustrative example is the example of the Spanish cluster. It seems to be the most powerful, at least judging by the documents. And they conducted a so-called Moncloa operation in Spain, of course. Pedro Baños was seeking to become director of the country's Department of Homeland Security. But this statement made him too pro-Russian for the Integrity Initiative.
What country has everything we lack? Russia. We've achieved nothing by provoking Russia. A comment by likely new National Security Director Baños.
So, yes, that statement was what clanked London's retributive machinery into action, and he was put on the bad guys list. So it's all started with tweets like these in an attempt to discredit Baños by members of the Spain cluster.
It not only makes Spain look really bad, it's a real danger for the country and Europe as a whole.
Putin, when realizing that, without any effort, he has just got one of his affiliates in government with full access to our security and defense policies.
But that was just the beginning. It didn't take long for headlines to follow the online phase, the initial phase. Also, Anonymous say that they obtained screenshots from the WhatsApp conversation, quite bluntly called #NoPedroBaños. And this is one of these screenshots, and it kind of does shed light as to how the whole thing was coordinated. Like, powerful people within the ruling Socialist Party are making pressure to stop this. This meaning the nomination of Pedro Baños. So what they essentially tried to do was to convince the Spanish Prime Minister from the UK that the guy he wanted to take one of the top jobs in Spain was no good. He was too pro-Russian, and as a justifiable cause for that, they presented the public opinion they themselves tailored to how they wanted. At least that's the narrative the Anonymous are saying is in their documents. Of course, we couldn't really verify them independently, although we did reach out to the UK government. But guess what? Apparently, the Spanish cluster succeeded, and I mean, well, historically, it's a historical fact that Pedro Baños did not get the position as the Director of Homeland Security in Spain. So if that's not meddling in foreign countries' affairs, then, well, what is?
So, by the sounds of it, it's a UK operation of influence, but it's good influence, according to them.
Well,
Judging by the
that's
name.
what they say. That's
Integrity
what they say. The
Initiative.
best intentions.
Yeah, OK, many thanks. Fascinating story. Igor Stoyanov bringing us all the details there. We have indeed, as Igor mentioned, asked the British Foreign Office to comment on whether they are or not funding the Integrity Initiative. We'll let you know if and when we hear anything. Earlier, my colleague Andrew Farmer discussed this issue with security analyst and former UK Army officer Charles Shoebridge.
What struck me was the sheer speed in which this influence operation was able to swing into action in real time, not just in organising or rather influencing media coverage, but actually through Twitter and other social media, very rapidly mobilising resources in order to change ministerial appointments even in other countries. When you look at the timeline of that operation, it was just a few hours from when the operation was launched to when the operation succeeded.
Is there a grey area, though, Charles, on whether they're actually doing anything wrong here? Because they're pushing an opinion, but everybody's entitled to an opinion, aren't they? And it would be up to, using this Spanish case, it would be up to the Spanish officials to take everything on board before finally deciding who to appoint.
Yes, you're absolutely right, and there's certainly no problem with anybody expressing any opinion so long as it's lawful, doesn't facilitate or urge violence and so on. But what we've got here is hidden influence. Actually, these are not genuine opinions, or if they are genuine opinions, they're being pushed and given prominence because they are backed, including by funding from organisations such as the UK government, and that funding and backing so often, of course, the whole point of a covert operation is not disclosed, and so that gives the impression that these are genuine popular feelings when in fact they're being orchestrated by generous funding and important figures linked to, in this case, the UK government.